Yay for telling my family I'd already settled down without inviting any of them? My name is Chloe. I am 28, and this Christmas my family finally discovered that I am not the failure they always made me out to be. By the time my mother raised her glass and announced to the entire table that my sister had just bought a beautiful house, I already knew this dinner was going to end badly. The turkey was still steaming when she leaned back in her chair, loud enough for everyone to hear, and said, "Your sister just bought a beautiful house. When are you going to settle down?" My sister did not even try to be subtle. She smirked over her wine and added, "Yeah, Chloe, when are you going to grow up and get your life together?" The room fell quiet, waiting for me to laugh it off like I always did. Instead I smiled. Not the polite smile they were used to, but the quiet smile you give when you are holding a secret no one in that room deserves to know. I looked at my mother and said, "I already did. I just did not invite anyone who doubted me." Her face turned red so fast it was almost funny, and every fork froze halfway to every mouth as they all stared at me like they were seeing me for the first time. That Christmas table was just the final act. The story really started years ago in a quiet suburb outside of Chicago, in a house where my mother, Diane, decided early on who the star of the family would be, and it was never me. My older sister, Sabrina, is 4 years older than me. She was the firstborn, the pretty one, the natural performer. If there was a room, Sabrina knew how to walk into it as if it were a stage. My father, Thomas, worked long hours as a structural engineer, always stuck on some project, always on a deadline. So, most of the day-to-day parenting fell to my mother. And my mother made it painfully clear that Sabrina was the main character, and I was just the background. I still remember the year Sabrina won a local dance competition. My mom went all out. She threw a huge party in our living room with a giant cake shaped like a trophy, balloons everywhere, and relatives crammed into every corner, taking pictures of Sabrina like she had just won an Olympic medal. My Aunt Marlene kept saying how proud she was. Our cousin Ava, her daughter, stood next to me and whispered, "This is a lot for a plastic trophy," but my mom was beaming. That same year, I won first place in a statewide writing competition. There was no party, no balloons, no cake. My mom glanced at the certificate while she was cooking dinner and said, "That is nice, dear. But look what Sabrina does." She held up a picture of my sister in her sparkling costume, as if that were the only achievement that mattered. Moments like that never ended. When I was 10, we had planned a family picnic that I had been excited about for weeks. That morning, my mom came into my room and said, "We have to cancel. Sabrina needs a new dress for the homecoming dance, and the sale is today." I told her we could go afterward or tomorrow, but she said, "Your sister's things are more important right now." Another time, I had a piano recital I had been practicing for months. I scanned the audience for my mom's face, but her seat was empty. I found out later she had missed it because Sabrina had a volleyball game, and according to her, "Your sister needs me more. People are counting on her." It did not matter what I did, I was always second. I was the quiet kid who loved books and notebooks, the one who sat in the corner during family parties while everyone crowded around Sabrina, asking about her friends, her hobbies, her plans. After every gathering, when the noise finally died down, Ava would find me. She would sit on the edge of my bed or next to me on the back porch and say, "They have no idea what they are missing with you." It helped, but it did not change the fact that inside that house I felt like a shadow. My mother was busy polishing Sabrina's spotlight while acting like I should just be grateful to stand nearby. By the time I reached my late teens, the favoritism was not just about trophies and attention anymore. It was about money and opportunities. When Sabrina finished high school, my mom, Diane, sat her down at the kitchen table with a stack of brochures from a nearby community college. She told her, "We want you to stay close, honey. Community college is perfect for you. It will keep you stable and around people you know." What she really meant was, "I want you close to me." Tuition, books, and gas money were all taken care of. Sabrina drifted between classes, parties, and whatever friend group she knew that semester. My mother called it networking. When it was my turn, the tone changed completely. I told my parents I wanted to go to a state university and study digital marketing, because I loved the mix of creativity and numbers. My mother barely looked up from her phone. "That is expensive, Chloe. Maybe you should think about something smaller, more practical." My father, Thomas, muttered something about scholarships as he rushed out the door, late for another site visit. And that was it. No one offered me brochures or promised to cover anything. So I went online, filled out scholarship forms until my eyes burned, and got a part-time job at a local coffee shop. I learned how to foam milk, smile at rude customers, and do homework during my 10-minute breaks. When I got my acceptance letter from the University of Illinois with a financial aid package, my mother just said, "Well, if they are paying for it, I guess you can go." Sabrina stayed in town, enrolled in community college, and predictably, spent more time at bars and parties than in class. Still, every time she passed a subject, my mom made it sound like a miracle. When Sabrina finally finished her associate's degree and got a sales job at a clothing store in the city, my mom booked a big dinner at a nice Italian restaurant downtown. She invited the whole family, ordered appetizers for the table, and made a toast about how proud she was of her firstborn. Ava and I clinked our soda glasses and exchanged a look. A few months later, I graduated from college with honors. I walked across the stage, heard my name called, and felt the weight of every long night and every double shift at the coffee shop. After the ceremony, while my friends were taking group photos with their families, I checked my phone. There was a short text from my mom. "Congratulations, sweetie. Your sister is swamped at work. You should call and tell her all about it." No dinner, no toast, no family celebration. It hurt, but it also made something clear. If I waited for my family to celebrate me, I was going to be waiting forever. After graduation, I moved into a tiny apartment in Chicago. The walls were thin, the windows were drafty, and the kitchen could barely fit one person, but it was mine. I got an entry-level job at a small marketing agency, the kind where you do everything because there is no one else to do it. I managed social media, wrote ad copy, pulled reports, and stayed late watching tutorials on campaigns that actually worked. I lived on deals from big box stores, learned to cook basic meals from recipe apps, and tracked every single dollar in a spreadsheet. My mom called often, but the conversations always circled back to Sabrina. "Your sister just got a new bonus. Your sister might be up for a promotion. Your sister is thinking about moving to a nicer neighborhood." The few times I tried to share something from my own life, she would say, "That is nice. But did you hear what Sabrina is doing?" After a while, I stopped giving her details. I let her assume I was just scraping by, barely keeping up, just like she had always imagined. Instead, I poured myself into my work. Because when your own family treats you like you are Plan B, sometimes the only option you have left is to become so independent that no one's opinion can touch you. I just did not know yet how far that independence would take me, or how much one Christmas night a few years down the road would matter. The turning point came on a cold Christmas night 3 years before that final dinner, back when I still cared what my mother thought of me. I had just finished my first major project at the agency, a campaign for a mid-sized local brand that wanted to reach younger customers online. I had poured everything into it, working long nights and weekends, learning new tools and testing out ideas. When the numbers came back and we saw sales jump by nearly 30%, my boss actually clapped in the middle of the office. He pulled me into a small conference room and said, "Chloe, this is the kind of work that gets people promotions." I went home that week feeling like maybe, just maybe, I was finally building a life that mattered. So when my mom insisted I come home for Christmas dinner, I said yes. A part of me wanted to show her I was not just barely surviving in the city. Maybe I was still hoping she would finally be proud of me. The house was the same as always. Warm, smelling of food. My mom moving around the kitchen like a general. Sabrina arrived late, of course, with a new hairstyle, new boots, and a new story about her coworkers. She hugged my mom first, then gave me a quick side hug like I was a distant acquaintance, not her sister. We all sat down at the table, plates piled high, and the conversation flowed back and forth. My Aunt Marlene asked me how work was going, and for once my mom did not cut me off. I took a deep breath and started to share. I told them about the campaign I led, how it had gone viral on social media, how the client had extended their contract, and how the agency was talking about using my strategy as a model for future projects. My cousin Ava's eyes lit up. "That is incredible," she said. "That is like a real career, not just a job." I laughed, a little shy but proud. I admitted I had gotten a bonus, nothing life-changing, but enough to feel like I was moving forward. For a few seconds the table was quiet, everyone listening. Then my mom tilted her head and smiled, but not at me. She turned to Sabrina and said, "Speaking of moving forward, did everyone hear about Sabrina's new car?" She just got an SUV, one of those nice ones. Makes her commute so much more comfortable. The conversation snapped away from me like a rubber band. My uncle asked about the model, my aunt asked about the color, and my mother bragged about the deal they had found. I watched the spotlight slide off me and settle back on Sabrina, right where it always belonged. Ava shot me a look from across the table, one of those glances that says, "I saw that. I am sorry." Later that night, while we were cleaning up, Aunt Marlene cornered me in the hallway. "Your mom just wants you to be happy," she said, in that careful tone people use when they know they are about to say something you will not like. "Maybe you should not focus so much on work. Men look for someone who can balance a career with family. Sabrina is good at that. She is not intimidating. You do not want to make your life harder later on." I just stood there with a stack of plates in my hand, listening to that same old script play out again. If you work too hard, you are doing it wrong. If you do not work hard enough, you are a disappointment. Either way, it was always me who needed to adjust. My mom rode with me on the way back to my apartment that night. The heater in my car was making a faint rattling noise, and the city lights blurred past the windshield. She stared ahead and said, "You know, your sister is really getting her life together. New car, stable job. A good man. You should really think about settling down. You are not getting any younger." Something inside me just clicked. A quiet, solid feeling. I realized I could chase her approval for the next 10 years and still end up in this exact same conversation, still being measured against Sabrina in some twisted competition I never signed up for. So I stopped playing the game. I stopped giving her detailed updates on my life. At work, I doubled down. If no one at home was going to see me, I would make sure the people in the real world did. Over the next 2 years, I moved from junior roles to managing bigger accounts. I learned how to turn trends into strategy, pitch clients, and lead a team. Our agency landed a few national brands, and I found myself in meetings with people I used to only read about in trade articles. Eventually, my title changed to creative director on some major campaigns, and my salary started to reflect the hours I had put in. I started investing too, at first just small amounts. I read about index funds and long-term growth. I downloaded a couple of investment apps and set up automatic transfers. While other people my age were posting pictures of expensive bars and weekend getaways, I was putting money into accounts I did not touch, living like I was still broke. Meanwhile, Sabrina bounced from job to job, from sales at the clothing store to an assistant at a small office, then to some kind of event coordinator. Every time she switched roles, my mother framed it as brave and adventurous. "Your sister is not afraid to try new things," she would say, as if that made up for the instability. The more stable my life became, the more I started to see the cracks in Sabrina's perfect picture. There were always new shoes, new gadgets, new hairstyles, new trips, but for some reason she was always calling my mom for help to get her through to the next paycheck. My mom would sigh and complain about being tired, but the money always came through. I stayed quiet, watching and doing the math in my head. It did not add up. Still, I kept my distance. I built my career, my savings, my life. I told myself it was not my business how Sabrina and my mother managed their money. I only broke that rule the day my mom called to announce the big news, the one that would put me back in the spotlight, whether they liked it or not. She said Sabrina was finally buying a house, and the whole family was getting together to celebrate. My mom turned the news of Sabrina's house into a major event before a single box was even moved. A couple of weeks after that phone call, she sent a message in the family group chat in all caps about a backyard barbecue to celebrate Sabrina's mortgage approval, as if my sister had just been handed the keys to the city. When I got to my parents' house that Saturday, there were little house-shaped balloons tied to the fence and a big cardboard cutout of a key propped up on the patio table. My mom had even ordered a cake with "Congratulations on your new home, Sabrina," written in swirly frosting. Sabrina stood in the middle of it all, glass in hand, describing the place like it was a palace. 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, a charming little yard. Only 20 minutes from the lake, perfect for future kids and for hosting the holidays. Every few minutes my mom would chime in. "We are so proud of her for working so hard. She deserves it." I lingered near the grill with my dad, flipping burgers while he muttered about interest rates under his breath. People drifted in and out of conversations, and my aunt asked me if I was still in that little apartment in the city, the way someone might ask if you were still driving the same old, beat-up car from high school. I said yes, and she smiled that sharp little smile and said, "Well, at least you do not have a mortgage yet. Must be nice not to have any big responsibilities." I bit my tongue to keep from snapping back and took a sip of my watery soda instead. Later, when most of the family was outside taking pictures with the cake, I went into the kitchen to refill the ice bucket. That is when I heard my mother's voice, low but urgent, coming from the dining room. I stopped by the doorway and listened. Sabrina was sitting at the table with a thick envelope in front of her, papers fanned out in a messy display. My mom sat across from her, glasses on, brow furrowed. "I do not know how you are going to keep up with all this," my mom said. "You have 3 credit cards almost maxed out, the car payment, and now this mortgage." Sabrina sighed dramatically. "I know, Mom, but if I do not buy now, I will never get in. Everyone my age is buying. I cannot be the only one still renting. You know how that looks." My mom rubbed her temples. "How much are you short for closing costs?" Sabrina slid one of the papers across the table. "About $10,000, she said. "Maybe a little more if they do not waive the fees. I was thinking you could pull from your savings again or your retirement account. Just this once. Just until I get that promotion. Just this once." The same line I had heard her use for homework extensions, rent money, phone bills, and parking tickets. Always just this once. My mom hesitated for a moment, then said, "I will see what I can move around. Maybe I can put some of it on my card for now, just until you get settled." My stomach turned. I thought about the night I had asked my mom for a few $100s to cover the security deposit on my first apartment, and she had told me it was important I learn to stand on my own 2 feet. I thought about every extra shift I had worked, every weekend I had skipped going out so I could save. She was bailing Sabrina out so casually. I backed away before they could see me, my heart beating too fast. A few minutes later, I walked into the dining room like I had just arrived, and they both smiled like nothing had happened. My mom tucked the papers back into the envelope, Sabrina slipped it into her purse, and the performance moved back out to the patio, where the cake and cameras were waiting. That night, driving back to my little apartment, I opened my laptop and started running the numbers. I checked my accounts, my investment apps, my savings. Years of quiet work, saving, and investing had added up to more than I had even let myself acknowledge. While my mother was pouring money into Sabrina's appearance of success, I had been pouring mine into my future. For the first time, the idea of buying a house did not feel like a fantasy. Felt like math. Within a few weeks, I was meeting a realtor in a small lakefront community just outside the city, walking through a bungalow with big windows, a wide front porch, and a view of the water that made my chest ache. 3 bedrooms, an open kitchen, a small office at the back with a direct view of the lake. No shared walls, no upstairs neighbors pacing at midnight. The price made my palms sweat, but when I sat down with a financial advisor and we went over everything point by point, he said something that stuck with me. "You have done the work. You can afford this. You could even pay cash if you want to avoid the mortgage headache." So I did. I emptied the accounts I had been building for years. I moved things around and wired the money. No loans, no cosigners, no desperate phone calls to my mother. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room by myself and just listened to the silence. No traffic, no neighbors, just the faint sound of water against the shore and my own breath in my ears. It felt like stepping into a life that no one, least of all my family, had ever seen for me. Ava was the only one I told at first. She drove out one weekend with a trunk full of houseplants and a toolbox, walked through the front door, and just started grinning. "Chloe," she said, "this is insane. It is like proof that you were never the one losing." We spent the weekend putting together furniture, unpacking dishes, and arguing about where the couch should go. We went to big box stores, filled up carts with towels and lamps, and by Sunday afternoon, the house looked less like a listing and more like a home. At one point, Ava stood in the doorway of my new office and asked, "Do they have any idea?" I shook my head. "Nope. And I kind of like it that way for now." I did not want my house to become another stage for Sabrina or another talking point for my mother. I wanted one part of my life to be completely my own, untouched by their expectations. Honestly, I thought I could keep it that way. I thought I could let them continue their fantasy of who was winning and who was losing, and I could just live my quiet life by the water. I just did not know yet that one Christmas dinner was about to bring it all into the light, whether they were ready for it or not. Christmas at Sabrina's new house looked like a holiday commercial. The living room was decorated with white lights. A massive tree glittered in the corner with matching ornaments, and a faint smell of cinnamon and sugar hung in the air. Holiday music was playing just loud enough to feel festive, and my mother, Diane, moved through the kitchen like she owned the place, telling everyone how proud she was. I arrived in my old hybrid, parked a few houses down the street, and just sat there for a second, looking at the front door. A part of me wanted to turn around, drive back to my quiet house on the lake, and spend the night with a frozen pizza and my cat. Instead, I took a deep breath, grabbed the bottle of wine I brought out of habit, and walked up to the entrance. Sabrina answered the door in a red sweater dress, her makeup flawless, the kind of polished look that photographs well. She gave me a light hug, glanced at my outfit and said, "You look nice. A little simple but nice." Classic Sabrina. Inside, the family was already settled. My Aunt Marlene and uncle were on the couch. Ava was leaning in a corner, scrolling on her phone, and she gave me a quick smile when she saw me. My mom came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, and kissed my cheek. "So glad you could make it," she said, as if I were the one who had to be begged for an invitation. Dinner was loud, the way big family dinners always are. The table was covered in food: turkey and mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, stuffing, baskets of rolls, and a pumpkin pie cooling on the counter behind us. People passed dishes, clinked glasses, and swapped stories. For a little while, I just let myself blend into the noise, listening more than talking, answering polite questions about work and the city with vague, non-committal answers. I was about halfway through my second bite of turkey when it happened. My mom raised her glass, tapped it gently with her fork, and the room quieted down. "I just want to say how proud I am of my daughter," she said, beaming at Sabrina. "Buying this beautiful house, building a real future, truly getting settled. Now that is what stability looks like." Then she looked at me, and I felt the shift before she even opened her mouth. "Your sister bought a beautiful house, Chloe," she said, her voice a little too loud. "When are you finally going to settle down?" A soft murmur went around the table, a couple of awkward chuckles, a few raised eyebrows. Sabrina did not miss a beat. She tilted her head, gave that smug smile, and said, "Yeah, Chloe, when are you going to stop acting like a college kid and get your life together? You cannot live in that tiny little apartment forever." For a moment, nobody said anything. Forks hovered over plates. Someone cleared their throat. I met Ava's eyes, they were wide and cautious. It would have been so easy to do what I had always done: give a weak laugh, shrug it off, and let the comments slide. But I was not the same girl who used to drive home in tears after these dinners. I had a house key in my purse that said otherwise. So I swallowed my bite, set down my fork, and looked my mom straight in the eye. "I am settled," I said, my voice calm. "I just did not invite anyone who doubted me." My mom blinked, confused for a second, then let out a little laugh like I had told a joke she did not get. "What are you talking about, Chloe? Do not be dramatic. You are renting. It is not the same." I held her gaze. "I am not renting," I said. "I bought a house 9 months ago. 3 bedrooms, an office, and a yard right on the lake. I paid cash for it." The silence that fell over the table was almost physical. Someone's fork clinked against their plate. My aunt's eyes went wide, and my uncle stopped mid-chew. My mom's smile froze on her face, then faded completely. Sabrina let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Okay, right," she said. "You bought a whole house in cash? Come on, Chloe. Nobody likes a liar." Ava spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. "She is not lying," she said. "I have been there. It is real. It is beautiful." Every head turned to her, then back to me. My mom was slowly shaking her head. "Why would you buy a house and not tell your family?" "Because every time I tried to show you my life, you changed the subject to hers," I said. "You did not want to hear about my degree, my job, or my promotions. Why would you care about my house?" "This is ridiculous," my mother snapped. "Your sister worked so hard for this place. The least you could do is be happy for her instead of trying to one-up her at her own dinner." I felt the anger rise, not the wild kind that makes you scream, but the cold, steady kind that makes everything very clear. I looked at Sabrina. "I am happy for anyone who can get a house," I said. "What I do not like is you pretending you did it all on your own while you drain mom's savings and max out her credit cards like it is free money." Sabrina's face hardened. "Excuse me," she said. "You do not know anything about my finances." "Actually, I know a little," I replied. "I heard you at the last barbecue. 3 maxed out cards, a car payment, and you were $10,000 short for closing, so Mom had to rate her retirement again." I was not snooping. You were practically shouting it. My mom's eyes widened and she shot a look at Sabrina, guilt and panic all over her face. "That is none of your business," Sabrina snapped. "So now you are spying, eavesdropping. That is pathetic." "What is pathetic?" I said. "Is Mom telling me over and over that she could not help me with a security deposit because I needed to stand on my own 2 feet, then financially burning herself out to keep your image alive? I have been standing on my own 2 feet for years. You are standing on her bank account." My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My uncle cleared his throat. Someone muttered, "Wow." My mother's voice was tight. "Chloe, stop it. You are ruining Christmas." "No, Mom," I said quietly. "You ruined Christmas the moment you decided to use it as a stage to humiliate me while praising Sabrina. I am just finally talking back." There was a long, heavy pause. Sabrina leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. "So you think you are better than me now?" she asked. "Because you have some lake house and a job with a fancy title?" I looked right at her. "No, I do not think I am better than you," I said. "I think I stopped playing a game that was rigged from the start. That is all." I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, louder than I intended, but I did not apologize. I grabbed my purse and stood up. "Where are you going?" my mom demanded. "We are not done talking about this." "I think we are," I said. "You made it clear a long time ago whose side you were on. Tonight, I just made it clear that I am finally on my own side." For a second, no one moved. Then Ava stood up too, almost on instinct. "I will walk you out," she said. We crossed the room in front of a dozen stunned faces and stepped out into the cold night air. As the door clicked shut behind us, the noise of the house faded, and my heart finally steadied. I could feel the shockwaves I had left in that dining room, the cracks that had formed in the story my family had told themselves for years. And as I walked down the driveway to my car, keys in my hand, a thought settled in my chest like something solid and unmovable. For the first time in my life, I had not just survived a family holiday. I had changed the terms. 3 weeks after that Christmas dinner, the family group chat was quieter than it had ever been. Gone were my mother's all-caps messages about Sabrina's amazing new curtains, or how perfect her neighborhood was. Instead, there were long gaps, random forwarded memes from relatives trying to pretend nothing happened, and the occasional awkward question from someone asking if I was okay. The only person who texted me normally was Ava. One night she sent a message that read, "You know they are still talking about it, right? The way you smiled when you dropped that whole house bomb? You are basically a family legend now." I was sitting at my kitchen table when I read it, my laptop open, my cat curled up on the chair beside me. I looked around my home, the one nobody thought I could ever have, and felt something I had not felt in a long time around the word family. Peace. A few days later, I invited Ava and her parents, my Aunt Marlene and uncle, to the lake for a weekend. They showed up with too many snacks and not enough jackets, complaining about the cold and marveling at the view. We cooked together, walked by the water, and played board games at my table. At one point, Marlene stood by the window looking out at the lake and said quietly, "I am sorry, Chloe. I should have spoken up sooner." I just shrugged, not out of disrespect, but because I was done caring about other people's regret. "You see it now," I said. "That is what matters." As winter turned to spring, news about Sabrina and my mother trickled down to me, mostly through Ava. The credit card balances Sabrina had been juggling finally became unmanageable. The promotion they were counting on did not materialize. Her work performance suffered under the weight of late payments, collection calls, and constant stress. A few months after Christmas, her company had layoffs, and she was one of the first to go. Without that steady paycheck, the house that had been my mother's source of pride became an anchor. They tried to make the mortgage payments for a while, but the numbers just did not work. Eventually, Sabrina put the house on the market. The dream house that had earned her a standing ovation in the backyard was sold to pay off a fraction of the debt she had built trying to look successful. My mother, Diane, called me again and again when it all started to fall apart. At first, the voicemails were angry. How could you embarrass your sister like that? Then they turned to please. We are still family. Your sister needs help. You have money now. You could loan her something until she gets back on her feet. And buried in all of that, there were finally words I thought I would never hear. I am sorry. I did not realize how much I was hurting you. I listened to every single one, sitting on my porch with the lake in front of me, and I realized something important. An apology does not erase the years you spent making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's story. It does not obligate you to step back into a role that nearly broke you. So I called her back one last time. I told her, Mom, I am glad you are starting to understand what happened. I really am. But I spent my whole life being the person you overlooked, the one you expected to sacrifice so someone else could shine. I am not doing it anymore. I am not going to fix problems created by choices I did not make. I love you, but I am done. Then I set boundaries I never thought I would have the courage to set. Fewer phone calls. No more money conversations. No more guilt trips about Sabrina. When they ignored those lines, I did what I had to do. I blocked numbers, muted chats, and chose my own version of loyalty. I invested that energy into my work, my friendships, and something new. I started volunteering at a local women's center, helping women who felt trapped by family expectations or financial dependence find practical ways to build their own freedom, budgets, resumes, and basic marketing skills to create side income. Sitting across from them, listening to their stories, I recognized my own. The overlooked daughter, the responsible one, the one everyone just assumes will be fine, so no one ever asks if she actually is. If there is a lesson in what happened to me, it is this: being the invisible child does not mean you are powerless. Sometimes it means you are the one quietly building a life strong enough to walk away from. Parents can play favorites. Siblings can take up all the air in the room. But in the end, the only person who truly lives with the consequences of your choices is you. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to say no even to your family. You have the right to build something they never saw coming and to protect it from the people who doubted you. Comment. Sometimes the hardest part of growing up is realizing you have to become your own biggest supporter. I believe setting boundaries is not about shutting people out, but about creating a safe space for you to thrive. It is a quiet act of self-respect that says your peace matters more than anyone's approval. Your worth is not determined by how loudly others celebrate you, but by the steady integrity with which you build your own life. True strength often grows in the shadows when you are doing the work for your own sake. Healing begins when you stop playing games that were never yours to win. You are responsible for your own happiness, and you are not responsible for fixing the consequences of others' choices. You always have the choice to walk away from a dynamic that no longer serves you. I hope you find the courage to choose your own peace and build a life that feels true to you, even if no one else understands it right away. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.